Hi, it's been a while since I last recorded a program, and I'm going to keep it 15 minutes. That's the format, and I'm not going to do any post production because I don't have that kind of time. So I think I told you before in my video that I don't know what you guys want to know, and I feel weird to talk about things that you guys may or may not care. So I encourage you guys to let me know what you want to hear about game industry. Um, so today I'm going to talk about why are you building games? Why do you want to build games? Do you build games for passion or do you build games as a business? So this is a very important subject because recently someone on LinkedIn approached me and she told me she liked this game and liked that game and she's a programmer. She can also be a designer. And so I realized some of this industry know-how may be useful uh, for more than just one or two people. So first, let's assume that you want to build games or you want to get into the business to build video games for for your passion because you love it, because you play this game, that game, and you feel like this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. Well, that's how I felt too. Um, I didn't know how hard it's going to be. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't allow myself a choice, so I just got into the trade, and it's been 37 years. Um, I don't really know how to do anything else, but if you do it for passion, that's a great reason. Consider don't do it to make a living. Don't do it for livelihood. If you do it for passion, because if you do it for passion, then it's like it's an artistic endeavor. You go out and you build whatever you feel like building. I mean, in a way, you do it for yourself. You build a game that you like. So your love is in building that game, and that game is going to be the labor of love. I find it a bit problematic because for me, I care more about the player experience. That's more important than me because after making so many games, I realized the most joy I can get is when players love my games and they let me know how much they love the game. They let me know how much they love this thing they can do in the game. A lot of the details or the visual feelings they feel. I remember a friend of mine. Um, um, yeah, he loved two of his favorite games. I happened to be develop those. I think one was Madden Football on 3DO, and the second one was Super Puzzle Fighters. And I thought he was just BS in me. So I asked him, "Why do you like them?" And I was so happy that he told me his reasons, and I could tell him, "Oh wow, I'm so happy you pay attention to those details because I it took me extra time to put in those changes or those to make those enhancements." So that's fulfilling for me. But hey, it's okay. You can build games for yourself. You can build games for other people. And I think, and especially if you do games, make games that you want to make, again, like I said, that's an artistic endeavor. Don't make it a livelihood because you may or may not make money. It's hard. So, I mean, that kind of falls into the category of what we in the industry call it indie games. And nothing wrong with it. It's great. So if you can not make any money and make still have a place to live, still have food to eat for 6 months, for 1 year, go for it. Especially when you're young, when you still have time to retrain yourself for a different trade. Go for it. You only live once. If you don't try, you never know. You never know if you could have made it. don't have that kind of regrets. I wanted to work on Street Fighters. If that was the last thing I wanted to do. I took a pay cut. I went from Electronic Arts to Capcom because I wanted to work on Street Fighters. I was in the Northern California Street Fighter tournaments. I was so passionate about working on that game. And when I was able to look at the source code, work with the source code, realize it's really badly written. Um, I was formerly computer science trained because I wanted to make video games. So I went and got went and studied computer science. And when I read that code, I was very disappointed. But it worked. It worked. It was not easy to maintain. It was written in assembly and it was written for performance. And they were not computer science scientists, obviously. But hey, it's legendary Street Fighter. So I loved working on the project, and I especially love working with the people who made the original game. Obviously, when I joined the company, they were making the sequels, the three, and so on, the different variations. And I got to work on Super Puzzle Fighters. Anyway, um, and and that was my dream, and I chased after my dream, and I worked so hard to be in a position at that time of my life and in the history of the video game industry. I was able to join um, the project, of my dream, and I met a lot of wonderful people, and I had a wonderful boss. Um, so anyway, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but that's really hard to come by. That kind of opportunity is really hard to come by. So again, if you do it for passion, make sure you can afford it, and you need a few partners, ideally three. I mean, including you. You need an artist, you need a game designer, you need a programmer at least to get the whole game done. And if you have more people, then you kind of need a project manager or a producer to pull the whole thing together. So I'm not going to get into the art of indie gaming, but yeah, you gotta know why you're doing it for. I mean, the worst thing you can do is you tell yourself, "Oh yeah, 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 I want to make a living." But the game that you're making the game that you like, that you want to play. So make sure your goals and your actions are aligned. A lot of people say, um, yeah, 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 they want it to be a career, but when they do it, they make a game that is not commercial, that is not for other people. It's for themselves. Because if you make games for other people, you will study the market, you will study the landscape, you will study which platform is the best instead of your favorite platform. Anyway, so enough of that. So the second reason, it's actually, yeah, it's a half the reason I do this video today. Um, if you make games for business, then obviously you want your games to be popular and successful and monetize. So that's a different whole category. In the old days, you just make games that's fun. You make the games that are visually appealing, fun to play, fun to interact with, and make sure there's enough depth to keep people coming back to the game. That would have been enough. But these days, it's a little bit different. So so the platform actually does matter. There are more indie games on Steam. So could you do indie games? Because you're passionate. Yeah, and also commercially viable. I think so. I think so. Um, you got to be very good at what you're doing because indie implies you're independent, which means you're not being dictated by any publisher or even any investors for that matter. Investors who interferes. So you're independent, so you can have your own idea. So um, yeah, so they're less business driven, but you could be business driven, based on your own vision. So if your vision is to make a cool game that a lot of people want to play, yeah, it can be both. It can be I'm passionate about making a successful product, Nothing wrong with it. And um, people have pulled that off before. I've seen it all the time. I spent a lot of time in the indie scene, so I've seen it all the time. And the the successful people, the winners in that field, they always tell me all the time that if you're really serious about doing something, then you wouldn't do anything else. You would just drop everything. So if you don't do it that way, maybe you're not serious enough. Then maybe you should stop talk about it. Yeah. So quite a few people from that space who are successful, have told me in not so many words. Uh, okay. So, and if you do it for business to make a living, you need to play a lot of games. You need to study those games, not just play. You need to understand why they're built that way, and what's the difference between this game and that game? How do you articulate it? Especially if you're going to be a game designer, or if you're going to be a producer, or product manager, or project manager, you really need to study products well. Products, um, when they're shipped, everything should be intentional in the product, and we need to gather users' feedback. We need to know if a player hasn't played that game for 3 days, what was the last thing he did? And then, you after you collect thousands and thousands of feedback, you may realize, oh, level three was too hard. So because a lot of people quit at level three, or our tutorial was too long, and you cannot quit in the middle of it. So people not only stop playing the game, they also uninstall the game in the middle of the tutorial. So that those data will tell you a lot of things. Um, so I would say the one of the biggest difference between video games as a product versus other kind of products is that when people play video games, they expect to be emotionally entertained or engaged. So um, ennui or like boredom in a video game is like death. People are bored. That's why they come to video games. And if you introduce more boredom to them, then they most likely will quit because they are fed up with uh, boredom in life. That's why they come to video games. So anyway, what do? You dazzle them with visual effects, right? And the cannot be sluggish. The control has to be responsive. Um, yeah, and I guess we're not going to go talk about funding. We don't have enough time. But as for how to build a game, how to make a game successful, you can't just you know think on your own. Really, you really need to talk to people in the industry and exchange your idea with them and get their feedback, honest feedback, because nobody wants to offend you. Um, so you're most likely, most of the time, you're not getting honest feedback, especially from your friends or relatives. Um, so we like to, back in the days in the 90s, before we had what we called internet today, we would literally grab people from the street or just strangers and carefully observe their first impression. And that's really valuable. Um, yeah. So again, programmers, game designers, artists, you pick one. And if you're gonna do them all, you need to do it on your own because most game companies they don't like polymorphs. They don't like people who have too many talents. So you need to be very good at one, and the other ones, they're sort of supplementary skills and not your main. You cannot show up and say, "I want to be game designer and programmer at the same time." I can do both. That's not necessarily the best. All right, all right. Thank you, and let me know what you want to hear more from me. Thank you.